Good evening. I'd like to call this regular meeting of council to order Tuesday, February 10th, 2026, 6 p.m. We are broadcasting live on the Town of St. Mary's YouTube channel. The Council for the Town of St. Mary's acknowledges with gratitude and respect that we are gathering on the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee people of the Longhouse, giving thanks for all creation. I'll begin this evening by asking for declarations of pecuniary interest, starting with Councillor Craigmile.
None.
Councillor Edney.
None.
Councillor Luna.
None.
Councillor Lucas.
None.
Councillor Pridham.
None.
Councillor Alward.
None.
And I have none. The agenda was circulated. I have one ask of council. In discussions with Mr. Kittmer this afternoon, we thought that maybe it might be appropriate to move 8.2 down the agenda to maybe to 8.6, if you will. So, because council will probably want to spend a considerable amount of time, and we want to send Mr. Wolf home actually to deal with his family because he probably has more pressing obligations. I suspect that the public works issues won't garner that much debate, and just in expediency and out of respect for the staff, I think it might just be, if everyone would be okay with that. Okay, is there anything else with the agenda anyone wanted to mention? Okay, so then I'll seek a motion that the February 10th, 2026 regular council meeting agenda be accepted as amended. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Alward, second by Councillor Lucas. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Item number 4 is our public input period. Is there anyone in the gallery that wanted to ask a question of council with regards to something on the agenda this evening? I received nothing via email. I'll just check with the clerk. Is there anything was presented? Okay. So we'll move on to item number 5, which is delegations, and we have a large contingent here this evening. Thank you for coming. Some of the board members and local people involved with Optimism Place that's very active in our community, and as well, I'll make a plug too. There's a run coming up. I believe it's on the 14th. There's a local woman, Sydney Tuzel, who's raising money and awareness about violence in our communities. There was an incident a number of years ago, we remember, during our council term, and I would just encourage council to look for that and support Sydney, as it's a great initiative. But welcome everyone for coming this evening, and if you please come forward. We have Donna Jean Forrester and Nancy Preston that are going to speak tonight about the issue of intimate partner violence. So welcome, the floor is yours, and if you just want to turn on your mic, thank you.
Thank you. Guess I'm on, okay. Good evening, Mayor Strathy and council members. My name is Nancy Preston. I'm here today as the chair of Optimism Place Women's Shelter and Support Services, and I am a longtime resident of the town of St. Mary's. I am joined this evening, as Mayor Strathy has noted, these 5 members from the St. Mary's area that serve on the board of directors as well. I joined Optimism Place board in 2018, right after one of my employees, Laura Wigglesworth, was killed near Clinton by her fiance. As an advocate for women experiencing intimate partner violence, I am hopeful that the town of St. Mary's will declare intimate partner violence an epidemic. Donna Jean Forrester is our executive director at Optimism Place. She also is the lead of the gender-based violence priority area of the Perth County Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. As such, she brings a level of expertise to this topic that we would invite her now to share with you. Donna Jean.
Thanks, Nancy. And thank you to Nancy and the other board members who've come out tonight for your support and leadership of Optimism Place and your advocacy for women, not just in St. Mary's, but across Perth County. I'd like to start by expressing my appreciation to the town of St. Mary's for your recent support of our Not Okay campaign that's working to raise awareness of intimate partner violence across Perth County. When I reached out to Brent Kittmer, the CAO, about supporting the campaign by placing rink-side advertisements at both ice pads in St. Mary's, there wasn't a single hesitation or need to convince. The answer was simply, yes, of course, we'll support this campaign. And it's important that our community knows that violence is not okay, and your support in that campaign has really been invaluable. I also want to express my appreciation to this council for your endorsement of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan in recent months. Through this plan, gender-based violence, including intimate partner violence, has been selected as one of 3 key priority areas to focus on over the next 10 years. Thank you for your endorsement of the plan. Today, 107 municipalities in Ontario have declared intimate partner violence an epidemic, and it's our hope that the town of St. Mary's will become the 108th. Perth County, as you know, is home to 6 municipalities, and of those, West Perth and the city of Stratford have declared IPV an epidemic. And just in January, the municipality of North Perth declared IPV an epidemic and committed to education and training for council and staff. And over the next month, our hope and the advocacy work of our board is that the remaining 3 municipalities will declare IPV an epidemic. And so it's the town of St. Mary's turn today. In the 31 days of December, 5 Ontario women were killed by their intimate partner or a family member. Every single day of the year, Perth County OPP and Stratford Police receive 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 calls related to intimate partner violence every single day. IPV negatively impacts our community's sense of safety and well-being. As Mayor Strathy mentioned, you may recall on February 12th, 2020, Sydney Tuzel was violently assaulted and stabbed by her ex-boyfriend outside of Little Falls Elementary School, right here in St. Mary's. And on Saturday, Sydney has spent a long time healing from that. And to commemorate the 6th anniversary of that event, Sydney is running from Little Falls to Optimism Place to raise awareness of IPV and also as a testimony to her strength and courage to rise and run after such a public experience of violence. She's also raising funds for Optimism Place to support all of the other women who are experiencing intimate partner violence in our community. When I wrote this, she had raised $5,000, and that was just last week. Today, she raised $6,100 so far. And I would encourage members of council to contribute to Sydney and her run if you're able. While Sydney's stabbing was a very public experience of intimate partner violence, there are hundreds more women in the town of St. Mary's alone who are currently experiencing IPV or who have experienced it in the past. 44% of women who've been in an intimate relationship have experienced some form of psychological, physical, or sexual abuse in their relationships. It happens here, and it's not okay. In Perth County in 2024, there were almost 1,000 reports of intimate partner violence, which resulted in over 200 charges. Every month, probation and parole supervise an average of 115 clients who are on probation as a result of domestic violence charges. At Optimism Place in 2024, there were 203 women and children living in shelter and an additional 200 women accessing IPV-related services, but who did not need residential supports. Since 2022, 50 women in our community have been assessed as high risk of lethality from their intimate partner, and they've received wrapped-around supports and safety from a collaborative group of community partners to immediately reduce their risk and ultimately save their lives. Every year at Optimism Place, we see about 10 to 15 women, along with their children, from the town of St. Mary's alone, who are accessing our shelter for residential stays. And in addition to that, we have about 25 to 30 women and their children who access our community-based services, such as counseling, legal support, and other supports associated with experiencing intimate partner violence. And I will tell you that every single day, at least one person from St. Mary's calls our 24-hour support phone line for support for themselves or for someone they know who's experiencing intimate partner violence. Declaring IPV an epidemic is not just symbolic words on a page. There are actions to be taken to make a difference. And the first step is education, knowing the signs of intimate partner violence and how to respond appropriately when someone is experiencing it. Next is to seek support from experts in our community to help understand the issue and how our community is responding to it, and then to raise awareness amongst your friends and family members by just talking about it, sharing information, supporting activities. In your package of materials for this meeting, there's a list of ways that you can engage, but I will highlight just one, because next week, on February 17th at 6:30 in the evening at Little Falls Elementary School, Stop VAW, which is our collaborative community committee of frontline workers from a variety of organizations who are working together to end violence against women, are hosting a community information session about intimate partner violence. Sydney Tuzel will be sharing her experience of intimate partner violence, and all of our community partner organizations will be present to provide information and support right on the spot. The sessions will help community members to recognize the signs of coercive control and escalating risk. They will talk how to talk to someone who you think might be experiencing intimate partner violence and what supports are available here in St. Mary's and all around Perth County. If you're able to share information about this event, encourage people to attend or attend this event yourself to learn and support the residents of St. Mary's who are experiencing intimate partner violence, it would be appreciated. Intimate partner violence has been increasing in our community. The negative effects of IPV on residents of our community, particularly women and children, has consequences that last for generations. We encourage the town of St. Mary's to declare intimate partner violence an epidemic and to continue to work collaboratively together with our whole community to ensure the safety and well-being of all residents. I thank you for your attention tonight to this very important community issue.
Okay, thank you
Thank
for
you.
your presentation. Are you okay to take a few questions? Okay. Any questions from council? Councilor Craigmile?
Your numbers are staggering. Oh, sorry. I find your numbers extremely staggering. And I don't have a good feel for them, but I bet the numbers that you're talking about are a small percentage of really what's out there.
Yes, we know it is very underreported. Just calls to police, those are people who call police. Many more don't.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions, comments? Councilor Luna?
Thank you, Worship. This is very near and dear to me because I had a very good friend many years ago that had an issue, and so this brings back a lot of stuff for me. But I do believe it is an epidemic, and I know at our community policing advisory committee meetings we have asked that we get numbers for intimate partner violence. And it is in St. Mary's for sure, as we know. And I would like to put a motion on the floor, Your Worship, that St. Mary's declares intimate partner violence as an epidemic.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councilor Pridham? Okay. We'll just, are there any further questions from the presenters just before we proceed with that? Okay. Any discussion with regards to the motion moved by Councilor Luna, seconded by Councilor Pridham? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on, and thanks to everyone in the gallery that has attended this evening as well. It's important for us to know how important it is an issue and to learn as well. So I'm sure that we can have further discussions in terms of what education and outreach would look like, and we can discuss with staff how we move forward. But we really appreciate everyone coming out this evening. Okay, thank you for your time. Okay, so moving on, then we will move to item number 6, which is acceptance of minutes. Are there any issues, errors, problems with the minutes as they were printed? Okay, seeing nothing then, I'll seek a motion that the January 27th, 2026 regular council meeting minutes be approved by council. So I'm willing to move them, moved by Councillor Craigmile, seconded by Councillor Alward. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Item number 7 is with regards to correspondence. There was a letter that we received from Mr. John Van Dyke with regards to an issue that we will be talking about later. Were there any questions with regards to this letter? Okay, I'll seek a motion in the correspondence from John Van Dyke regarding Bill 21 be received. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Lucas, seconded by Councillor Pridham. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Under reports, we might also do 8.1 now, if you're okay. Jenna, please, with regards to a request for a refreshment vehicle. I believe this is exactly similar as to last year, but in case there are any questions. Jenna, do you have any?
Council, the information is before you. You've seen this in the past. The dates are listed there. There is nothing that stands out as being new. If this is your wishes, then we will let the applicant know right away that they may proceed as planned. Thank you.
Okay, any questions with regards to that? Then I'll put the motion on the floor. If everyone, thank you, Jenna. I'll put the motion on the floor if everyone's okay that admin 03-2026 Rotary Club of St. Mary's request for refreshment vehicle bylaw exemption report be received and the council approves the bylaw exemption request as identified in staff report admin 03-2026, and that notwithstanding any provisions of bylaw 92-2022, a license shall not be required to operate a refreshment vehicle if part of the 2026 Rotary Brews and Food Fest, and that nothing within this license exemption shall exempt refreshment vehicle operators from their obligations to meet the food and safety regulations administered by the Huron Perth Health Unit or the fire safety regulations administered by the Town of St. Mary's Fire Department. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Pridham, seconded by Councillor Alward. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. All right, so we'll skip 8.2 and come back to that. And if we can go to admin reports with regards to 8.3, we have Mr. Wolf with us this evening with regards to a sole source procurement for the Listic grinder pump. Or is Jed going to do it? Mr. Kelly's going to do it. All right, you're off. Sorry, Jeff. I didn't get the memo. Sorry, Jed.
No, that's okay, Worship. Sorry, I'm just fighting a head cold. So
Okay.
Tonight. Staff is seeking a sole source award. We have a request from Ontario Clean Water. So it's a sole source reward for the mini monster. That is the acronym they use it. It's a part of the Listic process. Sometimes I think Dave is punking me with these names, but that's what they call it. It is proprietary in manufacturers, so we need to replace it like for like. It's a life cycle replacement, and we just would like approval to grant Aqua to go ahead and replace it.
Okay, questions from council? Okay, seeing none, I'll put the motion on the floor then that report PW 02-2026 sole source procurement for Listic grinder pump be received, and the council approves the sole source procurement for a new Listic grinder pump and to be administered by the Ontario Clean Water Agency for the amount of $46,917.97. And furthermore, that council authorize the chief administrative officer to sign the expenditure request and approve to proceed document with Ontario Clean Water Agency. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Lucas, seconded by Councillor Luna. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Next item is 8.4 with regards to SCADA support services. Mr. Kelly, please.
Thank you, Worship. Staff is seeking to extend the SCADA support services agreement with Ontario Clean Water. So this is the control mechanisms that run the water and wastewater. It's been something we've been in progress with them, or we've been using them since 2016. Haven't had any issues with them. They have intimate knowledge of the system. New as part of this agreement, we have a unit rate pricing. Brad has identified some items as part of the security audit that need to be addressed, so some low-hanging fruit. So we've added that, and we're going to fund that through variance to the operational budget.
Okay, questions with regards to the SCADA system? Okay, seeing nothing, I'll put the motion on the floor then. That report PW 03-2026 sole source procurement for SCADA support services be received, and that council authorize the sole source procurement of SCADA support services to Ontario Clean Water Agency for a 3-year term totaling $45,906, and the council authorizes a $5,000 contingency allowance to be incurred in 2026 at the discretion of the chief administrative officer to address and improve cybersecurity protocols related to the SCADA system, and the council authorized the chief administrative officer to sign an expenditure request form with the Ontario Clean Water Agency for SCADA support services. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Alward, seconded Councillor Craigmile. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thanks, Jed. 8.5 with regard to the pothole prevention and repair program. Jeff, please.
Thank you, Worship. This is a relatively easy one. It's a grant program from the province. We were recently informed that we were successful with our application, so we have a quick turnaround time. We're asking authorization for the CAO to sign the Ontario Transfer Payment Agreement for the Pothole Prevention Program. We're eligible for up to $38,000. And then we'll come back at a later time. It was unexpected funding, so we'll come back at a later time with a recommendation on how to direct that funding.
Okay. Questions? Councillor Brennan?
Yes. Did I read in there somewhere that it has to be spent before March 31st? 2026?
Through your worship, the criteria for the grant was a little weird. It was related to 2025 spending. So we had to, any expenses that are eligible had to be incurred prior to March 2026. But it's a little erroneous because we can't do pavement prevention really in the winter, like the type of things that they want us to do. So it's really 2025 activities that we did. There is sort of retroactive funding for stuff we did last year.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Luna?
Thank you, Worship. Can this be used to repair the holes for the manhole problem that we have? Is that what the manhole covers? Is that a pothole?
Through your worship, there are often potholes that form around that particular issue. So yes, the funding can be used for activities around fixing potholes in that situation. Yeah.
Because it's more involved, isn't it? They have to be lifted up or something?
Through your worship, yes. Usually it's, if you're filling pothole, like often if it's a pothole, you're filling it with like a coal patch material. But for issues around manholes or structures, it's a little bit more involved, yeah. So.
Okay, anything further? Okay, thank you. I'll put the motion on the floor then, that PW 04-2026 Ontario Transfer Payment Agreement for Pothole Prevention Repair Program report be received, and the council authorizes the Chief Administrative Officer to sign the Ontario Transfer Payment Agreement for the Pothole Prevention Repair Program in order to meet the required submission deadline. So I'm willing to move that motion. Moved by Councillor Pridham, second by Councillor Luna. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thanks, Jeff. Okay, so thank you, Council, for moving things around a bit here, actually. So item 8.2 is with regards to 14 Church Street. Our last discussions with regards to this, there's been a lot of questions about cost to date and how we finance it as well. Sarah and Angela are here this evening as well. They've both done reports on the project, so if there are questions with that regard, they'll be answered. And we'll just turn it over to Mr. Kittmer to go through his report.
Yes, so thank you, Your Worship. So, Council, my plan tonight is to, effectively, I'm going to treat this more like I would a report at Strategic Priorities Committee. So I'm going to go through it section by section and then just allow you to ask questions as we go, because I just think it's, in a lot of cases, it is almost a linear explanation, but I have to jump around a little bit just to make it make sense. So I just appreciate you asking any questions as you go, because I don't want to move on and not have something be fully clear and then have there be questions and confusion. As the mayor said, Angela was instrumental in helping us deliver the downtown service location review, so she can help me with any of the questions about the needs. I'm just going to quickly touch on a reminder of the need. And then Sarah and Angela are both working on the capital campaign being spearheaded by the library. And so if there's any questions related to that tonight, they can answer them. But Sarah is planning to do a more fulsome report on the capital campaign and how we recognize donors at the March 10th meeting. And so you'll have a full opportunity there to understand how that's going. So I thought it probably makes most sense to provide council a current status snapshot of the project. So on August 26th, I brought forward a staff report that presented the findings of the downtown service location review. And really the purpose of that report was to communicate to council the work that had taken place over a 2-year period to develop a vision for 14 Church Street, to make council aware of what we at the staff level and at the our consultant level identified as our needs in our community, and then how 14 Church Street might meet that need under a specific vision. So that day, council did buy off on a vision for 14 Church Street for it to be a multi-generational community hub that provides programming spaces for the library, the museum, senior services, early learning services. It also was to be a place where there would be permanent space for adult learning, but also for complementary social service programs and employment services to have space to provide wraparound service to clients. And then flexible spaces that could be used by anybody in our community, whether it be service clubs, photography groups, just people who are dropping in for both structured and unstructured activities. Also that day, with council blessing that vision, you charged staff with moving forward to start seeking out capital grants. So we are in the process of that. We have met with the MP and the MPP informally just to understand if there's any specific programs that might fund a community hub. There aren't now, but budget budgets will be released in the coming months. But there are other funding programs that exist right now that we are contemplating applying for, because the next major milestone in this project is to hire an architect to complete the final architectural design of the interior and get contract documents drawn up to be released for tender at the point in time the council authorizes it. So we may be looking at applying for a grant to fund those costs. In my report in August, I touched very, very briefly on the costs. And I did that purposely in two ways. Because I wanted the report to mostly focus on the need and the vision and give staff the ability to communicate how they thought they'd use the building tomorrow. That was really the true purpose of that report, understanding that it's going to take some time for these cost estimates to materialize and become more concrete. And also just because they needed to be rolled up because it's so early in the process for a number of things to be projected accurately. I didn't want the numbers to confuse the true need and positive benefit that project's going to have. Unfortunately, since the time of my report, I would say both the need has been slightly misunderstood for detractors of the project for certain, and I would say the finances have been used as I could say misstated or used as a weapon to trying to pull away from the project. So the mayor articulated that through the budget process that we need to do a better job of explaining the finances, and I will take full responsibility for not having done that in August. But I have for you today that comprehensive report that's going to talk about finances. But I think it's important to first touch on the need. Since August 26th, I think the most common thing we've heard about the need for the project is, why are we just building a library? And we already have enough meeting rooms. And it's important for me in my role to clarify that we're not building a library. We're not building more meeting rooms. We're building much more than that. We have to remind ourselves that this is not a library-driven project. This is a project that the town has driven when we decided to purchase the building. So in 2022, we purchased the building with a very loose conceptual vision that we wanted to have a campus of services in this area between Town Hall, the library, and whatever that building would become. And then we went through a public-led process to figure out what the needs should be. Through that process, we had a downtown service location review committee that learned various things about our community. They learned a lot. They learned actually that through public consultation, there is a vast array of needs in this community that people would like to see space for. They realized very quickly that we couldn't be everything to everyone. We couldn't provide space for every single need. But they really started centering themselves on a couple of key themes. One of the things that we've learned, especially since the pandemic ended, is that participation in all of our programs is at a significant high. On August 26th, you had your staff here in front of you from senior services, from the library, from tourism, from the museum, and from early learning services, explaining to you how their programs are bursting at the seams, how they're having to cap limits and put limits on the people who are participating, and how people are asking for more, and how if this building existed tomorrow, they would fill it tomorrow and it would be bursting at the seams already. There's a couple of things that really drove this. We know for certain that the library is out of space. We haven't had an investment in that building since 1988, so there's been no new public library space in the community since then. We, the town, we drove a space needs study that our facilities department compared what we have today at the library against standards for small rural libraries like ours, and we found that we're short 2,700 square feet. So when we refer to 14 Church Street being a library project, it's not going to be a library, but they will be an anchor tenant. They're going to be a very important person over there because we know they need space. And we know they need 2,700 square feet in the next 10 years to be able to adequately serve our community. We know that we're capping programs at the museum. Right now we have to cap all of our programs at 20 because they don't have enough space. There's other places that we could always be told that we could use space in our community, but I think you just saw from your Director of Community Services monthly report last month that we're oversubscribed at our Friendship Center programs, and it's very hard to find space there. Even last night, if you walked by the rink, I always call it the rink, if you walked by the PRC, you would have seen the community center was already booked at night for an Early On program. Early On's another program that's kind of bursting at the seams and is looking to program out in the community. So we just continue to see and drive this need. Some of the other things we haven't really thought about and I don't think I articulated well in August, and it's not even perfectly articulated in this report, is how we are growing. So we have an aggressive growth target of 1.5%. We want to be 9,800 people by 2040 is what the Rec Master Plan is projecting. There's a couple of different things that 14 Church Street is going to fit in really nicely with that growth plan. So as we are becoming more aggressive in our growth and we're encouraging higher density, it means people have less space in their home, and it means they have less space in their yard for things to do. So we need a place like 14 Church Street for them to go and just get away from their more dense environment, especially if they're living in an apartment building or a townhouse or something like that. But there's a couple of other things that we haven't thought about is the geography of where we are growing. So if you were to read your recreation master plan, here in Perth Public Health, in their consultation, what they said in here and what they would encourage you to do is ensure that you have equitable geographic distribution of all your recreation, culture, and leisure facilities and amenities. They noted for us that we don't fully achieve that necessarily. Our biggest recreation, culture, and leisure amenity is in the southeast corner of our town, being the PRC. And if you have transportation as a barrier, it's difficult for you to get there. When you look at where the growth engines of our community are going to be over the next few years, they're going to be in the north and the west. So if you have a transportation issue, you're not going to be able to get to the PRC, and they're encouraging us to do things in our downtown core. From a growth perspective, when you look at census to census, we are growing in the largest at the 50 to 55 plus demographic. Those people are enjoying the Friendship Center right now, but soon enough, if we don't find more space, we are going to have to cap their programs. And I'm going to hazard a guess at how well that's going to be received. So we are already facing this push. And the social issues in our community, we know those exist. So that's one of the other key things that people on the Downtown Service Location Review Committee learned. We need to provide service to them. We need to provide it in a wraparound way. We have been doing it in an ad hoc fashion, but now we have employment services looking for a place to go. We know Canadian Mental Health Association has offered drop-in here, Service Canada, and others. This will provide us one central location where we can provide that wraparound service. My view is that in our job as public administrators our job is to build communities. And somebody told me long ago, and they weren't wrong, that a community is not perfectly straight roads and perfectly black asphalt. You have to have things for people to do. You have to create a sense of place. But we also have to provide social value. So what here in Perth Health Unit would tell you is that all of those things I described by providing a place for people to go creates social connection. And when I met with them to talk to them about this project, they were so excited about it and its social value, its social determinants of health that it's going to create, that they're going to provide council a letter of support for this project saying 14 Church Street is exactly what communities need to do to create community health, to create sense of place, and to create social connection. The Downtown Service Committee also learned that over the years, plan after plan after plan has shown that we underserve the youth of our community. And what our strategic plan tells us to do is that we need to provide things in the public services to keep youth in our community, to make them feel connected, and to make them want to come back. And if they don't come back, to at least attract other young families to come. For me, I can share this. I have this unique experience where I got to grow up in this community and I got to experience it as a young person. I was very lucky, as my children were very lucky, that I was privileged enough to play organized sports. And through organized sports, I developed a deep connection to this community. I still identify myself as a St. Mary's hockey player through and through, and that's what made me feel connected to my community. And most of the people who are in my class that still exist in this community are the guys I played hockey with. But where are the people who were in band? Where are the people who are in art class? And where are the people who are in drama? All of those faces that I see in my graduating photo, they don't exist in this community anymore, because they didn't have anything to make them feel connected to this community. So when we say that we underserve teens and we underserve young youth, we don't if you're interested in sports. But if you're interested in arts, the culture, being creative, we as a town don't provide something for you. And we don't provide enough. We're not creating that social connection, and we're losing those people out. So to create true social connection and true youth attraction, you have to offer more than just that. But let's talk, that's my generation. Let's talk about the current generation. So Canadian Mental Health Association of here in Perth has just recently released a study. And it's shocking to read that 34% of youth don't feel safe in their school. and 30% don't feel safe in their community. And what they're encouraging us as leaders to do is to listen to youth and listen to what they're asking for. And what they're asking for is new and more safe spaces in schools, as well as in their community. So again, when I met with them and described to them this project that we're contemplating doing, they were beyond excited. They think it's exactly what communities have to do to support youth and to support a diverse range of options for youth. And they are also going to provide a letter of support to council encouraging you to move forward on this project because they think it's exactly what we need. So that's the need. When we come to that vision of we need programming space for social connection and we need programming space to meet our space deficits that we have today, certainly on paper and that we're going to experience, we need to have space for social services and we just have to have space for people to drop in. This is what your committee heard and why they made that recommendation to council. I've been doing public administration for 20 years and I've seen a lot of projects have detractors, and you're always going to have detractors because it's difficult to spend public dollars and it's difficult to spend it on community building projects like this. But this is one of the first times where I've seen a strategic plan, a recreation master plan, at least 2 other master plans, your project consultant who's a paid professional in the field for decades, your staff, your public-led committee, all strongly encouraging you to move forward with this project and saying, there's a need in the community for this today. You need to build it. I've never seen it so well aligned like that. And so anybody who wants to be a detractor of the project, they can be. And there will be, because it's hard to spend money. And it's hard to understand the need for a project like this when you're privileged enough to have everything in your life like I was when I grew up. But we have to do a project like this to build a community. And sometimes you have to take a brave step. And this is what we do. This is why we're public leaders. This is why we're here. I'm here to give you the advice, and you're here to make the hard decisions. So that's the need, and I have to clarify that need because it's getting more and more and more difficult just to throw it back and say it's just a library project or just meeting rooms. It's so much more than that. And your staff did an amazing job on August 26th explaining to you why this is going to be so much more than that and why they believe it's needed and why they believe we should have it today and tomorrow. And I hope that that message gets out in the community in a more broad way so that we can just all agree that some people are going to agree to disagree, but we had 350 plus people come through one day that said this is a beautiful project. You've got everything else saying this is a beautiful project. So that's just my start on the need. I haven't gotten to the hard part, which is the finances. But do you have any questions on the need that I can, any other thing that's sitting out there that is bothering you about this project? Because I'm a taxpayer too, and I'm your professional, and I have no problem with this project going forward. I have no problem with you paying for my taxpayers' dollars on this project, because it's going to be a great thing for our community.
Councilor Luna?
Thank you, Worship. I guess my concern is that with a new council potentially sitting here in a few more months, what kind of commitment can this council put on the table now to guarantee the future of the project?
There's really nothing that you as this council can do to stop it. And I think that's one of my greatest fears, is that there'll be a campaign to kill this project. I really do. And I wish we had brought this forward. I wish we were 2 years ago and you could see this through. I wish I had authority to go forward and do final design right now. But I sensed the room in August that there was trepidation in this room about the need, and there was fear from the numbers. And I think tonight I've done a really good job of articulating the need. And if you don't buy in now, and if people in the public don't buy in now, there's probably nothing I can do to ever make you buy in. But I know in the financial plan, I've presented something that, again, if I was a decision maker, we'd be building this tomorrow, because the financial plan I'm showing you is something that's very affordable. We've spent more money on flimsier excuses for need.
Councilor Luna, go ahead. Yeah.
Just one other thing, and no disrespect to the library or the CAO of the library or anything, but what I have been presented with out in the public is that it is a library project and it is going to be a secondary library. So how do we, and with the fundraising being spearheaded by the library, how do we manage that? Like,
the only thing I find you can do when people present you arguments like that is just to share with them facts. And The fact of it is that it's going to be a town building, and the library as an anchor tenant in it will likely have some form of lease with the town that explains how they use it, or we just tack it onto our memorandum of understanding. But it still is a town-controlled building where the library will be in there sharing space with all of our other staff. We'll have a centralized scheduling system, which we already do through guest services, to make sure that everybody's programs complement and don't overlap. And yes, it's going to, we can't deny that there's going to be library services there because they need it. And if, you know, many other communities have already expanded their libraries because they know of that investment, they know of the changing socioeconomic culture that, you know, the role libraries play. But selfishly as a town, we need space too. You know, you heard Jenny Makita say here today, you know, in August, that she's already looking for places to rent. She wants to go program to where the people are in the community, and she knows she underserves the downtown, and she knows that transportation is a barrier, so she needs to come downtown. So selfishly, we will use that building for senior services. You heard Amy Cubberly say that she can never satisfy her patrons because they always are getting capped at 20 people at the museum, and they want more. And it's hard to find places like Town Hall. It's hard to use the PRC because they're fully booked, so this would be a place they would use. So it's truly we can say it's going to be people might want to say it's going to be a library, but it's a community hub that's going to host the library. Their funding campaign is really like what I heard in August from council was, could we mobilize a community campaign for this project? And I applaud the initiative of the library for taking the lead on it and saying that will be our role because we know we need the space, and that's going to be our role in making sure that this project comes to fruition, because I know they're excited about it. I know their patrons are excited about it. I know their volunteers are excited about it. And they live and experience the library every day. They know it's needed. So it just has to be, again, I try to be as apolitical as I can, but I can't help but show a little bit of frustration of why there is so much resistance in this community for investing in something like the library, which provides so much good for so many people. I can't wrap my head around that. Yet we're prepared to spend tons and tons and tons of money in a recreation facility that is not accessible to everybody. There has to be balance. To build a community, there has to be balance. There has to be, you have to remove financial barriers to people. You have to, equitable access means things you pay for, but also things that are unstructured and free as well.
Just a comment, I just think it's a PR issue that we need a better PR presentation of the whole thing, and you're going to squash the rumors and the wrong ideas.
Yeah, and what I truly hope is that through the capital fundraising campaign that the library's put together and the way that they plan to recognize donors, that it just builds momentum. But like I said, I'm a believer that the PRC is a great thing for our community. But there's probably still 50% of our community that existed at that time that thought it was the wrong thing. But tell anybody today that it's the wrong thing. It's not. It's the right thing. It was the exact right thing for our community. And it just took some brave people to not worry about the other 50% of the people that were being detractors and just build it.
Councillor Crickmore, do you have?
Yeah. Thank you, Your Worship. There probably still is 50% today that still think, you know, the opposite to what you just said. But I think we all understand what the Downtown Source Location Review came to and whatnot. But when I keep going through these reports and I read things like, you know, we're talking 5 to 7 years down the road, and I can't help but remind myself just what you've got here, even in your background, where that original vision was, if I'm reading it correctly, I mean, strategic and operational needs for space, because I personally did see a requirement in the next 10 years for what the police might need downstairs, and where those staff downstairs are going to have to relocate somewhere because of X, Y, and Z. And I think we've always talked that although we're making this into this hub space, that there will always be that opportunity which is going to remove somebody from some of those spaces up top.
And not necessarily though, because we know the basement, or we know the first floor is fully programmed, and we know that the second floor is going to have programming, but it always had opportunity to grow. So there's that very large multi-purpose room in the upstairs that, again, would be used by people like by the Friendship Center. But we also have that wing that is easily transitioned into staff space if and when we need it. And if and when we need that, if we have to do that, the roles that it was functioning as, with informal meeting space for for the community to come and use, that's the beauty of the design of the building, is everything is flexible. So adult learning works in there during the day, but their learning room, the part of that would be their classroom, it would be easily available to be a meeting room and double up. That large multi-purpose room, again, it could be very easily used, but there's also just lots of informal spaces that if people wanted to come in, the little community sitting area up in the upstairs is a great little space to go and have a nice meeting of a service club. I don't think it would be difficult for us at all.
And I think those are some of the things that the public out there, I mean, when people ask you questions and you try and give this, a lot of unknowns with hub and whatnot, but when you say about town staff growth and the flexibility, and that's a key word you just mentioned, the flexibility of the space for the future. And I mean, just to help get everything across as to, we don't know exactly today because we are looking at a timeline of when. So, I mean, it is a difficult sell, but I haven't heard too much really negative recently, to be quite honest. And I think as I give the library a lot of credit for their fundraising, because I think as they're getting out fundraising, I think that's going to push the public into we need this, or,
Okay. Anything further with regards to the initial presentation? Councillor Alward?
Thanks, Your Worship. I don't have a question for you, but I think what really has kind of wrapped me into this project over the last little while is actually something you've just said, just in regards to the fact that if you're a teen or a young person here and you don't play sports, then we offer, in essence, very little to almost nothing. And so I see a lot of those programs. In fact, that's why I've enjoyed the library board so much in general, is I see a lot of versatility in programming for kids that maybe weren't as into sports, people like myself. And so I think there is really a value to that. And I think even just in a general sense beyond teens and young people. And I think that's something really worth chasing. So no, I think that you make a great point with that. Thank you.
And again, fully supported in your recreation master plan, where a focus group of creative adults came forward and said, we don't have a place in this community. Would the town ever think about giving us a place? And so, and that's what I'm saying, like continues to be data after data and after data. And as I scratch the surface more, I can find more and more data that supports everything that modern communities are priding themselves on and progressive communities are doing to support residents and create sense of place. It's a building like 14 Church Street and what our vision is. And so I think our rationale is well-founded. The need is well-established in our community through a very robust process. So I'm not even really prepared to argue about whether the need are there. It's not. To me, it's very concrete and established. So, but not to belabor that too much longer. You've asked me to explain how we're going to pay for it, and I'm happy to explain that because we started talking about this about a year ago about how would we fund this building. And your former director of community or corporate services and I had a conversation about how can we do it without impacting your tax base and having to raise new money, and how do we absorb it in the future so that it doesn't sting. And so we've got a fairly creative financing plan here that I'll explain to you. It gets a little bit complicated, but I'll do my best. But in the essence of transparency, when you flip through my report, I've presented at first what I believe is to be fairly self-explanatory, the current cost of the building. So I've just presented for you how much we purchased it for, how much our renovation's been to date, and then the downtown surface location review, which was $50,000 grant funded through a modernization grant. So I'm not gonna really touch on that. So what I really want to talk about first is, again, future cost projections, because this is an area I have to clarify because there's a nuanced difference from what I presented in in August. So you have the ability to flip around. We'll put the numbers right in front of you. So I would have tried to, when I think about the future costs that we have to incur, there are things that we have to do to the building and shell. There's things we have to do to the building shell that we're always going to have to do, even if nothing happens with the project, because we own this building and we have to maintain it. And then there's the capital costs to renovate the building to meet our vision. And I didn't actually do the best job of combining these things. So I just put them in as interior, exterior, and other. The interior costs is the Class D estimate that A-Link gave us in August. So again, this carries a fairly wide margin of error of plus or minus 15 to 20%, just because we haven't gotten into the nitty-gritty. So we carry a 10% contingency on that. What also should be included in there is the $800,000 of other. So that's the furnishings for outfitting the inside, any of the audio visual that we have to do inside, as well as the consulting for contracted men that would be done as part of the job. So $2.8 million just to renovate the interior and see through the vision. In terms of the shell costs, we're talking $870,000, most of which is already planned in this year's budget. So we have $600,000 to replace the windows, which have been approved in this year's budget, the stormwater outlet, which will be shared with the library, architect fees that were going to help us with a facade design, as well as a fire separation to separate ourselves and the building from the north. And then just to be transparent, I've included in there our future projection of having to replace the roof in 2033 of $175,000. So this admittedly is a different number if you were to cross-reference with my report in August. In August, what I did was I took that $3.73 million and then I added another 10% contingency on top, just to be ultra conservative and ultra safe. But I made the decision in this report to remove that because I'm talking about putting contingencies on top of contingencies on numbers that some are pretty good and some are in the future. So I felt it better just to represent them as they were with their own contingencies. So right now we are cost projecting $3.7 million of need. And as I said, 2.8 to complete the renovation of the project. And then the other, what I would call $870,000 in asset management costs that we're going to need to incur anyways, as long as we own the building. So before I move on, is there any questions about future costs?
Councilor Luna, yeah.
Just to clarify, thank you, Worship. To clarify, this is to get all 3 floors up and running. So we're not talking about staging it, or we're just talking about, well, is that to be decided yet? Or?
Again, we talked about that back in August, that staging it really doesn't provide you any benefit because you would have to shut down the building to do it. And those future capital costs are always more expensive because construction index is anywhere from 4 to 8% a year. So the recommendation from your architect in August was just to do it all in one shot. So as I get further, as I get further in the report, I've made certain assumptions in the funding plan that we continue on a normal course. And so for me, a normal course is I do my best to get grant funds this year. And if I can't, I put a project in the budget for next year, which is the final design of the inside. And we get ourselves at the end of 2027 to a point where you would be tender ready. Then I'd be asking council if they wanted to tender construction in 2028. And then you'd be about a year and a half build. So you'd get yourself into 2029, so opening in 29 or 30. So that's just for the sake of simplicity, I've assumed that council has adopted the vision. You've told me to go seek out grants and that we want to move forward on this project. Again, because I'm convinced of the need, so I'm going to continue working on that path until somebody tells me differently and tells me to stop.
Thank you, Worship. I know that this is a big project, but I still have that fear of the new council coming in and potentially 7 people sitting here, they're saying, there's no way we're doing this. So I don't know if there's some way to commit like fully to this somehow, like put the
Yeah. So so the Municipal Act says that one council cannot fetter the discretion of the next. So meaning that there's very little you can do today to bind the future council. The only thing that would have bound them is if we had an agreement in place to construct. So because we don't have an agreement in place to construct, there's very little this council to do. So even if I walked out of here today with direction to hire an architect and start doing the design, just given the timelines we're facing, I wouldn't even have that final design. It would take about a year, I would think. Maybe not, maybe 8 months, but things seem to take long these days. It'd be a year from now where I'd be still presenting to a new council saying, may I issue this for construction tender?
Councilor Craigmile?
Yeah, and in all fairness, may not even be 7 in the next council, it could be just a strong mayor.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of the strong mayor. You could have a strong mayor that says, put it in the budget, and you could have a strong mayor that says, take it out of the budget.
Just one question about the stormwater outlet. That's something that was going to need to be done one way or another eventually, right?
In my view, it does, because the benefit of it is that it now provides an outlet for the library. So we know we've had water issues in the library for years. That's why it's being 50-50 shared with the library. It now gives us an ability to at least, we're never going to prevent the water from coming in, and I think we've kind of abandoned that idea. And now our view is that we just need to manage the water as it gets into the basement of the library, and now we just have a place for it to go.
Yeah, I guess that being my point is that, it's a substantial amount of money, but the reality is that it could potentially solve problems that have been going on for years, and there may have come a time if foundations started going sideways or something that it would have been forced to be done. So it's an expenditure that I think that was going to happen sooner or later.
That's right. And Church Street is no different. Church Street, we are not preventing the water from coming in. We have house wrap on the inside with it connected to a tile, so we just need a place to pump it. Okay, so Jenna, go to the next slide. So now we're going to get into how we fund this, and this is where I'm going to have you're going to have to bear with me. So I've essentially taken the costs that I've already explained before, but tried to group them by how we're going to fund them. So the total to be funded at top is that's $3.7 million of future costs. So when I talked previously about the fact that we have building, structure, and shell costs, or what we consider asset management costs, that's at $870,000, and we're going to fund them through our regular way. We're going to use our capital reserves to fund those, and as I said, there's already $695,000 in 2026 that's going to fund the costs in the budget. As we start getting into the remainder, so that remainder, that $2.8 million of capital costs that we need to create this new building and this new thing, we're going to fund it using development charges, a reserve, community fundraising, and debt. So development charges provides us a great opportunity. So in your 2024 development charges study, it included $1.07 million for a library expansion. Because of just the statutory nature of development charges, we have to do certain deductions. It means we have $840,000 available in development charges to fund this building. So my view is I look at that as part of the library's contribution, because if we use all of those development charges for 14 Church Street, there'll be nothing left for any other expansion at the library, and the library understands that, and what I understand is that they're comfortable with it. The library also has a reserve that they use to collect for maintenance and for capital purchases. And again, in speaking with Sarah, the library board is about to embark on a conversation about how much of that reserve they'll ask council to use for this project. So again, it represents a funding source, and that's why I've marked it as TBD. Really the crux and the most important part of this funding plan, and how I continue to say in my report and in speaking, that we're not going to raise any new money that we weren't already going to levy for this project. How we do that is by establishing a reserve for Church Street. And so what the idea is that we will start contributing to a reserve specific to the 14 Church Street project. And in a best case scenario, we will contribute at least at the amount that we'll need for servicing debt in the future. So that in the years between today and when we build the project, we grow this reserve, that we'll have a balance that we would then use to apply to the capital cost to reduce the amount of debt. And then we'd already have built the debt servicing costs into our budget, so that when we need to service that debt, we don't put any new money into the budget. And then when debt is finished being serviced, we have to, to be good asset managers, we have to contribute to reserve in the amount of, usually it's about the same as your debt retirement, or it's your depreciation costs. That would already be there. We began this strategy this year in 2026's budget without impacting our levy in any way. We didn't levy any new money, and we put $73,000 to seed this reserve. And so I'm going to jump ahead because this is the important part, to understand how we did that without impacting the levy. And where it comes from is it comes from how we determine how much money each year we increase our contribution to our capital reserve. So council for years has said you want to be aggressive asset managers, and you want to be very proactive. You want to make sure that we're maintaining all of our assets, when they need to be maintained, but you also want to make sure that our plan's funded. So in 2024, we hired Hempson, and Hempson helped us develop a financing strategy for for how we finance all of that infrastructure management plan. And we chose a target of wanting to be out of our infrastructure deficit in 40 years. So to do that, anytime we retire debt, we don't give it back to the tax base, we put it into capital reserve. And then on top of that, we need to increase our contributions to reserve at least $164,000 every year. Despite that recommendation, we've maintained a more aggressive contribution to our reserve and a more aggressive approach to increasing it. So what happens every year right now is our treasurer will look at how much we contributed to capital reserve in the previous year, multiply that by 5%, and then add to it 25% of the growth for that year to come up with a number that we would say if we increase the reserve, or if we put $1 million in reserve next year, now we need to increase it $1 million plus that number. So what's been happening is that the $1 million plus that number under our old calculation is more than $164,000. So this year it was $268,000, which gave us $104,000 more that we were contributing to reserve. So all we did with this strategy is we took $73,000 of that 104 and put it into a reserve for Church Street. So that's how we didn't impact the levy in any way, because we were already levying this money. We were just redirecting it to a new capital reserve. And the idea with this funding plan is that you would just continue doing that year over year over year over year, because the money is already planned to be collected in the budget. And what I was concerned about with this strategy is about whether or not we'll continue to exceed that 164 threshold. So Spencer was great and gave me projections through to 2040. And what I've shown you here is that from 2025 to 2030, we're going to exceed that 164 by an average of $134,000 a year. 2031 to 2035, it's going to be around $190,000 more per year than that 164. And then in 2036, we start contributing even more. It's going to be around $300,000 more than the 164. So all we are going to do is take a portion of that surplus, or that difference between 164 and what we actually increase the reserve by, and put it into capital reserve for a few years. And then when it turns into debt servicing, we'll just take that delta and use it to service debt. And when it comes time to do asset management, we'll just put it back into reserve. And we've never once levied any more money than we were originally planning to levy. And the beauty of this strategy is that there's no risk. If for some reason the next council decides they don't want to do this project, all we've done is contribute to a different capital reserve, and we just bring it back and fund our assets anyways. So there's no new money. The only time there's new money is if council wanted to increase it to the recommended best practice next year. So if you were to ask me how much should we actually be putting in reserve to make this strategy as concrete as it could be, what we're thinking is $150,000 a year is a good number. Next year, we're only going to over-contribute by 134, so you'd have to add 16,000 in. So when I've done this math, I did it in a best-case scenario. I made the assumption that the 2027 council will want to be as aggressive, and for 1 year, increase it by 16,000 to get to that baseline of 150 that we want to put in reserve every year. So that's the only new money that we would have to put in. If council didn't want to have any levy impact, you'd put it at $134,000 through to 2030, and then raise it to 150 after that. Community fundraising. So, as I said before, council asked if the community fundraising campaign could be possible. I think the answer I probably gave you back in August was, it's difficult sometimes for a town to raise money for something it wants to do for itself. But the library has taken on the challenge of leading a capital campaign for this. And I think that's completely appropriate. It shows their partnership with us. It's good representing the fact that they're an anchor tenant. And I honestly think it's when people learn that we're building library space that is for social good, that's something that people want to contribute to. And as you can see, with very little effort so far and very little publication, we already have $165,000 in pledges. So the Friends of the Library want to be the first at the gate with an initial donation of $10,000. Waghorn, Stephen, and Sipos has already committed $65,000 in memoriam to Ben Waghorn. And we have a St. Mary's family who's pledged $90,000. That's to be confirmed, but I'm very confident that it's going to be confirmed. And if they say yes, I think there's a very good opportunity they would contribute $30,000 to $50,000 a year going forward for a period of time. So that's with little effort. And I think as we realize with fundraising campaigns, once one donation gets out there and people become aware of the opportunity, we have a very generous community and people like to give to a diverse range of needs. And I think we will see more and more and more. And I think it's not unreasonable to think that we could have several $100,000 there. The one thing about this funding plan is there is one revenue source that's quite absent, and that's grants. So again, this is a conservative estimate, assuming we get no provincial grants, no federal grants for this. If we do, then the bottom line that we have to fund out in debt just becomes better. So right now, as of today, I'm saying it's $1.3 million in debt. But if community fundraising goes up by several $100,000 and we get a grant and the library asks us to use a portion of their reserve, we're debting out even less of this project. And if you told me that we could do this project for $1 million or less in debt, again, I would say that I would be confused why we're not doing it tomorrow. And again, that's my personal and professional opinion because, like I've said before, I just watched us spend $1 million on the interior of this building. I just watched us spend $1.8 million on the pool. We spend $1 million a lot of times pretty easily without a lot of thought. Forgive me. Because we know it is needed, right? Because we just intrinsically know it's needed. And that's what I'm saying. We intrinsically know this is needed. And in my view, that's not a lot of money. That debt payment's not very difficult for us to assume. Why would I say that? Because everybody gets scared of debt. And it's natural to be afraid of debt. So what I put in the...
Just catch up.
Yeah, sorry.
Just 1 second.
Thank you, Worship. About the community fundraising, are those numbers and the contributors, the donors, made public yet? Because I think if people hear those names, Friends of the Library have a lot of weight in this town, and certainly Waghorn and Stevens.
I think I kind of just made them public. Yeah. and
Sarah, did you want to add something about the donations? Yeah.
Good evening, Council. We were waiting until tonight's meeting to see what direction Council gave. And then next week, we will be making public that the campaign is launched, and we will be announcing individual donations through the local media, having pictures taken with the donors, and then sharing those on a regular basis on our TV screen in the library and through our social media. So you are the first to hear, but the community will hear very shortly. And I just want to underscore that as we are chatting with donors, they are being very clear that every dollar they are giving is their support for this project. So it's pretty exciting.
And I didn't just go off kind of rogue there. I knew I was allowed to say that these were public. I made very certain of that. I don't want to name our St. Mary's family yet, who's considering, a large donation because I don't until they make the decision. But as I said, Sarah and I toured them through the building, and they were, again, very impressed. And I'm very confident that $90,000 will materialize.
Yeah,
So
I think it's also important to, sorry if I can, just important to point out that the library has a committee that has been doing a lot of work, and they're very enthusiastic, and I think that they have set some very high goals. I don't know if you want to talk about that or not, Sarah, but they do believe that this project will be popular in the community, and they have a real, a good plan. Do you mind just talking a bit about that, Sarah?
Sure. The library board met Thursday night to look and review what the capital campaign has been working on, and they blessed that the goal for the campaign is $1 million, and that $1 million includes some grant funding that we're going to apply for and hopefully secure. But it also means reaching out to our community, to our businesses, to our social service clubs, to individuals, to family members of all ages, who that are then given the opportunity to say this project means a lot to our family, the library means a lot to our family, and all the programs we attend from various programmers in town are important to us, and we stand behind this through a donation. We intend to run something that'll allow small St. Mary's residents to participate, all the way up to what we would consider to be a significant donor. I will be coming before you March 10th with some more information on that, but we did, the library board did bless the $1 million, and that's where we're going to start.
Thank you. Sorry, Brent, I just thought it was important that
No, that's
council
great.
understands sort of the discussions that have been
Yeah,
had.
no, it's great, and it's like I said, it's a campaign that's just in its infancy, and I think Sarah and Angela have developed a very strategic approach of who they approach first, and I think service clubs are next in line, and it sounds like there is very real interest from service clubs to be part of this project and help out. So we're just starting now, and I think as the word gets out there, I do think that $165,000 will grow very quickly. So I was just going down the path of debt, and because it's always important, because we all know from our personal lives that taking on debt is a significant thing. And again, as municipal leaders, we want to be very mindful of this, and because it's difficult. It's just a difficult concept to take on debt and borrow. But for us, if I was in your shoes, I'd be asking lots of good questions about, can we take on debt? Are we healthy? And I've tried to address those in the report, and I don't need to go over them all, just except to point out that as a municipality, we are subject to debt limits, and their treasurer has to calculate it every year. So as of last year, you could have taken on the amount of new debt that's equivalent to around $5 million in servicing. So that's a really, really healthy position to be in. It means that we can afford $5 million in servicing costs. You don't want to, like that puts yourself to the upper threshold, but it is a good indication that you're healthy. In our current debt position, we spend about $2 million every year servicing debt, but in the next 3 years, that's going to be reduced by almost half as debt from the MOC comes off our books and debt from the PRC comes off our books. So we'll see that be reduced by around $957,000, which is a great thing. Again, if you're following your asset management strategy as laid out, that would just be transitioned into reserves so that you can fund those assets. But again, it's a good thing to see that we are very healthy when it comes to debt, and that if we were to eventually take on $118,000 in debt servicing, we can afford it, and we know we're not going to impact the tax base because we've already baked it into the budget. And we baked $73,000 into the budget this year, and what I hope is the balance of it and more goes into next year's budget, and we would just seamlessly transition to paying that, and you wouldn't have to increase your taxes in any way. So I think that is long enough of me talking. That's the funding plan. I think we did a decent job of asking questions as we went through, but if you have any questions on the funding plan, I'm happy to answer them before I jump into operating.
Councilor Craigmile.
Thank you, Your Worship. Brent, can you just help me out here a little bit? So in the next 3 or 4 years, you're right, there's a lot of debt servicing coming off at the PRC, the MOC, and things like that. So that debt servicing, where the money we're currently paying, we're going to be still putting back into reserves for asset management plan, correct?
Correct. That would be, again, if you're following your asset management plan correctly, you'd just be then now levying that money to put it into reserve and paying yourself rather than paying a bank.
So is some of the money that we're going to be getting down the road from your plan, is it, of the 900,000, say that we're paying, we don't need 900,000.
Yeah.
We only need 6, or we're going to move 3 around to the
That's
14 churches?
Yes, yeah, yes, you do have that financial flexibility. So again, it just comes down to that difference between 164,000 and whatever we actually increase the reserve. So, just to put it simply, using the numbers I have in the report, from 2030 up to 2030, you could put $134,000 of retired debt into something else and not impact your strategy. For the next 5 years, you could put up to $190,000 of retired debt into something else and not impact your strategy. And then after that, 36 and on. And then we're starting to get a little far out, but around $300,000 of retired debt could go to something else and not impact your asset management strategy. So when I start thinking about this, we're very financially healthy now. We have lots of financial flexibility to still be proactive and aggressive on asset management, but also then make strategic decisions to be proactive and aggressive on other things too.
So just to carry on the same topic we're on, so is the next step for you maybe after this evening, well, you might have to look at what the asset management plan says over the next 10 or 15 years that we have to replace. There might be this fire truck or this, that, because that may all impact everything we might want to do out 5 years.
In theory, no. Like in theory, the strategy that we've done with Hempson has already done all of that for us, and it's funded over a 40-year period.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councilor Linda? Yeah.
Thank you, Worship. Every time we talk about a project like this, I bring up the PUC fund. And we've got 3.5 million, I think, sitting there. We technically could pay for the whole shebang in one right of a check, right? So have you figured that, like, are we going to borrow from ourselves like we normally do, or how? Have you gotten that far in the financing part of it, or?
Yep, I do know that. We've already leveraged all of that.
Mike, you're.
Sorry. The PUC reserve has $3.5 million on paper, but in a bank account, we've already borrowed from ourselves. And that's when we talk about like right now, we pay ourselves $315,000 a year in debt servicing, and it's to repay back the loan we've taken from things like the PUC reserve. So there's no actual it's not $3.5 million in hard cash. It's a paper exercise that we owe ourselves back.
Further questions about financing before we move on? Councilor Lucas?
Not so much a question, just a comment. I'm appreciating what I'm seeing here more than what I saw in August, for sure. So I commend you on coming around on that. And to go forward with this project without increasing our tax levy is significant to me. So if we can massage that in whatever way, which it looks like you've come up with that, I can start getting my head wrapped around. I felt like in August it was we're basically looking at a 2% tax increase to our levy into perpetuity. So I would really struggle with that. But how you've presented this and the numbers I'm seeing, I'm getting my head wrapped around it. And again, I think it's great that we need to get community support on board with this. Yes, we're always going to have detractors. Maybe a different council will have a different idea. But if you can create that positivity around the project within the community, there's a better chance that new council sitting here will feel it's a positive project, and our community won't say it's just a library project. It's a multitude of things. So I think we've definitely started in the right direction. I think we need to keep moving in that direction, and it's gonna, it'll be a lot of PR for sure. But this is a way better start. So thank you.
And actually, that's almost a perfect segue, because anything in August, Councillor Lucas was, I think, most highly concerned about the operating costs. And actually, it was Councillor Lucas who challenged, staff and myself to come up with an operating plan for this. So what I did in August did not do the project justice. And again, I think a misnomer I've heard since that meeting is that, oh my goodness, the operating costs for this building are going to be $361,000. And I have to say, it's not going to be $361,000. A lot of what I presented on the finances in August was for simplicity, because we didn't have the depth in the analysis. And that was an aggregate number which included $150,000 in asset management, which is that, again, everything I've talked about up to this point that is not factored into that in any way. That's that what we're contributing into reserve, starting next year if council agrees and going forward, so that can be taken off. And then an estimate of $211,000. And the estimate of, and I wouldn't even sit here today in front of you and say the operating costs for 14 Church Street are going to be $211,000. Number one, because it's very difficult to project 5 years in the future. And I also know that the operating costs are highly sensitive to decisions we're going to make at the day when we open it up. So when I presented 211 in August, I was trying to give council, and I was trying to be fair to council and transparent. Sometimes, my job is to be apolitical and not to betray my apoliticalness by showing too much support for a project. I know I've done that a little bit tonight, but I will never fudge the numbers for council and say to you, it's only going to be $100,000, and then bait you into approving something and say it's actually 211. So I was trying to show you the worst case scenario. And the worst case scenario in August was, I assumed, just for simplicity, operating hours will be the same as the library. We'll fully staff it ourselves. It won't generate any revenue at all. And the cost to operate the building will be the same as Town Hall, because they're roughly the same size of building. But when I started thinking about it, I don't want anybody to put their finger on an operating cost today because it's so hard to project in the future. But when I started thinking about it, what I wanted to show council was my cost calculations are very sensitive to the assumptions we make. And so I started having a little fun with myself a few weeks ago, saying, but what if, and starting to calculate the numbers, and came up with about 100 scenarios And I thought this would be brilliant. I'll show council this, that there's an infinite number of scenarios for operating costs because of the assumptions I make. And I thought, well, that's kind of a jerk move, so I'm not going to do that. But I came up with some just to show you that it is sensitive. It does change, and it's better to think of a range. And I think today I'd be confident saying that today, if it was to open, it could be in the range of $150,000 to $180,000. And I won't go through the chart on page 30 too much, just because it's just there to show you that things can change. So I've shown you scenario 1, which is what I presented originally. And then Angela helped me come up with other staffing plans, and something even just as simple as changing the assumption for how long it's going to take to open and close the building from 30 minutes to 15, changed our operating costs by $16,000. And then if we assume, I showed what it would look like if you had some volunteer hours in there. And I'm not saying that's not realistic to have volunteers, but I don't think we can rely on that because volunteerism would be a plus, but not something we should assume. But then I showed you different scenarios where even if we kept all the assumptions from August the same, but just changed the public open hours, how just modestly changing the hours for open to the public changes the operating cost from $211 down to $178 to $180. Some more realistic assumptions that we could make is that we were very conservative in August saying facilities costs would be the same as town hall. And what that included was $20,000 a year in maintenance, which we're not going to incur on that building on day one. So I knocked that down by $15,000, saying $5,000 on a new building makes more sense. So that's what this whole 1A, 2A, 3A represents, is knocking $15,000 off to something that's more realistic. That's not even making the assumption that it's going to probably be more efficient to heat and cool over there, so we won't see the electrical or the gas costs that we see in town hall. So again, I think that's going to also positively impact us. The assumption of no revenue, I think Angela's explained through the process that there are revenue generating opportunities. A very interesting one that could happen for us is that employment services, the new employment services provider, is looking for a home in St. Mary's and has had real discussions about co-locating with the library. And so 14 Church Street would be a great place for them to co-locate with adult learning and because they use almost the exact same space. So in my 1B, 1-2B, whatever scenario, I said, but what if it's more efficient to operate this building and we have that tenant, and I assume $13,000 a year for lease fee because that's what we were paying to rent space in the downtown core. So again, it brings our operating cost even down further and down further and down further. Again, just to show you that it's hard to project into the future. Yes, it's going to cost us money to operate it, and it will be, it will be 6 figures, but it's not going to be probably the $200,000 and $300,000 range. Right now, I would confidently say it's around $150,000, $180,000. And then the nice thing is that if you're concerned, if you were on council that day and you were concerned about it impacting taxes, we know we have financial flexibility. I just showed you all the calculations that by 2030, we'll be contributing $188,000 more per year into our capital reserve. Yes, some of that will go into debt, but not all of it, so there'll be a delta there as well. Council of the day could say it's better for the tax base to take $60,000 of that, still not affect our asset management strategy, and give it back to the tax base to absorb this building into the tax base over a couple-year span. So if you did that, the tagline is, we have this building we need, and staff have come up with a funding plan that raises no new money and has almost zero tax impact. That needs to be the headline for this. And that's what sells it, is, again, we are in such good shape that this is a project we could do tomorrow. It costs money. I'm not trying to say it doesn't cost money, but we can do it with very little new impact, if no new impact to our tax base. And I've never seen a project like that before. And that's my story.
Okay, thank you. Questions, Councilor Pridham?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question about staffing. You've got town and library staff there, and you've got a costing for staffing. Is that like one person in the building?
Yeah, so what it assumes is that if you look at the renderings, there is, for lack of a better word, a guest services style desk at the entrance. So we're assuming that will be staffed every hour the building is open. And so that's your new staffing cost. It's assumed that any of the staff that are programming in the space, whether it be library, senior services, museum, that we won't add any new staff to do that, and that those staff would come and set up their program and tear down their program.
So youth programming for void that we're experiencing would be through the library and through our youth center, or?
Yeah, precisely, it'd be through all existing staff, yes.
Councillor Alward.
Thanks, Your Worship. Sarah, I was just curious, so the library currently makes use of volunteers, correct? In some sense or capacity?
Yes, we do. We have several that assist with programming and some that assist with the collection.
What are the hours like on that right now? Do you know?
We have a volunteer that helps with the Dungeon and Dragons program on Saturdays. So he's there for a couple of hours. He's our big programmer. Then early on, sometimes has a student that attends to be part of their playgroup at the library on Wednesday mornings. And then in the summer, that's when we use the most youth volunteers who help with our summer program. So we have 2 paid staff, 1 full-time, 1 part-time. And then depending on what volunteer hours are available, we have volunteers that assist to get job experience. And they can be with us anywhere from 3 hours to a total number of all of them together, up to maybe 8 hours a week. That's when they're most available, so that's when we most see them. Now, I leave out the one-on-one reading program, which is a program designed for children to meet with a reader and work on their literacy skills. Depends how many volunteer pairs we have going at any time, but at the most we've had 10, and they meet for an hour once a week. So if there's 5 pairs, then it gives you a sense. But that program hopefully will continue independently and will always fluctuate depending on how many readers we have come forward.
Okay, any further questions? Councillor Pridham.
I'm just wondering, other than the one new hire, will any of the staff currently be relocating to that space? So there's more than one staff person in the building at a time.
Yeah, and so that's a great question because we did talk about that. We feel that there will always be at least 2 staff in the building, just between that guest services person and then either a library staff being over there. But again, not a new library staff, somebody that's already exists in the complement who would normally be working at the library, or just through our programming staff. And again, that's an initial model that, you know, that's what you would launch initially as you try and grow the building and again, grow patronage to the building. Again, to be fully transparent, it may change over the years, and you may need something to change, but that's how we would envision day one looking like.
Or as maybe we get a tenant to the building that's there from, 9 till 5 or some other.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that adult learning's there too for regular business hours as well. So you would always have more than 1 staff in that building.
Okay, Councillor Lina.
Thank you, Worship. Just to get back to the donor fundraising, are there going to be donor naming rights on any of the rooms like we did with the PRC? And is there, do we have an official name for the building on the 14th Church Street?
So the library fundraising advisory committee had a conversation about, we need a working name for the campaign because we had decided that we recommend the Community Commons at 14 Church Street. So we've just been using that as a working title. Should a donor come forward and want to identify the naming rights for the building, then that would be a discussion. And included in, I will have more information for you at the March 10th meeting because the Capital Campaign Committee has and the library board have supported a fundraising campaign that's going to have multi-levels, many ways for donors to give, but there is the naming opportunities for some of the rooms at 14 Church.
Okay. Councillor Lucas.
Thank you, to the Mayor. Just a comment, when we went through that tour in August, I didn't see much when it came to tourism and in asking, there didn't seem to be much uptake for tourism. And to me, if we're creating a community hub and we're looking for staffing options and things to do, and we want to direct people to the downtown, I'm just like, I'm scratching my head a little bit why we're not pushing that tourism component within the community hub. It just seems like a very symbiotic fit.
And I think it will be. I think, if Amy was here, she would explain, like for now, town hall is the beacon during the day and during the normal work day. So we will always have our student here. But what Amy's view is that she would like all staff to be able to be ambassadors. And we already know that on the weekends, because the library is open, people come there. The expectation is that now we'd have this new place that would be open on at least Saturdays. And you would have the staff trained there. Again, you have that guest services style staff member at the front door. They would be able to be trained in and knowledgeable in everything that's tourism related, and that they would function as that tourism ambassador.
Okay, any further questions, comments?
So again, I'll just quickly recap it. In terms of, there's no real disposition of this report. It was asked for information, so I'm just recommending you receive it for information. So now you have a fairly comprehensive report that describes the DSLR process and the need. Now you have one that complements and describes the finances. So in terms of what direction I'm resting on today, I have an adopted vision from council. I've been given instruction to go seek out grants, so we're doing that. We've identified 3 grants, and we're going to meet on Thursday to decide which component of the project today we apply for, whether it be some of the capital work we do this year, or whether it be starting to think about paying for a portion of the design fees. So I'm going to keep working on that path. And again, it's likely you'll see, it's likely the new council will see something in the 2027 budget. You'll see a touch point on this project again almost right away in February or in March. So as Sarah mentioned, she's going to come forward and provide a fairly thorough report on the capital campaign committee and the fundraising. And again, Sarah and I have talked about that. We just think it's important because it ultimately is, the council and the town's building, and council needs to bless the fundraising campaign and bless some of the ideas that they talk about for donor recognition. We would never want to do that outside of council's purview and understanding, and it just brings you into the understanding of the project. So, and then after that, you probably wouldn't get a touch point in the project until we have, good news and a successful grant or the 2027 budget.
Okay. Anything further? Councilor Pridham?
I thank you for your presentation. It has eased my concerns, and I'm very appreciative of the library's fundraising campaign as well, because this project with that added bonus, I think is quite doable. Thank you.
And as you can probably tell, I'm a little bit more passionate about this project than most that I get myself involved with, because I truly believe in being very, very neutral. But again, just having lived here my whole life, I can just see how this is going to benefit us. But give yourselves a bit of a pat in the back. I've worked for a lot of councils and done a lot of big projects where these types of questions weren't asked, and they weren't asked until after the fact. So the fact that you're already asking deeply to understand the need, asking deeply to understand how much it's going to cost to build and operate, that is very good. We have very good, robust planning now. And again, if you're asked in the community, I think you have all the information now to help people explain. And if they choose to continue to be a detractor in the project, that's their choice. You're never going to convince everybody, but at least you have good information to share with them.
Okay, anything further? All right, thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Sarah, as well. And thank you, Angela. So the suggested motion is that amend 04-2026 14 Church Street financial analysis be received for information. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Luna, seconded Councillor Alward. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, if everyone's okay to keep going, or do we need a break? We're okay? All right, we'll keep plowing ahead here. We'll move on to council reports, just with regards to committees and councillor updates. I'll start with Councillor Craigmile, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll start with PAC, and we did have a meeting last night. It was really a joint meeting with the Committee of Adjustments, and it was really discussing with the consultants the zoning bylaw, and like they're in kind of phase 1 right now, we'll call it, and they just wanted to get input from both committees as to what they've seen and what they'd like them to be investigating and different things like that. So I thought the meeting went very well. Everybody had things to say, and it was, I think we provided good information for planning people and the consultants. BRA, so we haven't had a meeting since I last talked about it. Although last night also at the same time as the joint PAC meeting, at the BIA, Michelle Courtney was there and gave an overview of really the ICNI and what had been going on. And I guess I watched it after I was done the other meeting on Zoom on the town YouTube. And I don't know what my thoughts were. There was really no questions, but when I look at what Michelle put out there to them, I mean, there should have been lots of questions. And I feel that, and I don't really know, but I'm wondering if maybe they knew Michelle was coming there, but didn't let everybody in the BIA know she was going to be there. So people that might have had something negative to say or questions to ask would have been there. But I mean, the very first slide said something like 3 boxes on it and said, this was started back then. The municipality has 0 input in funds into this anymore. It's all being looked after by Pro. I mean, the bells and whistles should have been going off in a few heads to ask a few important questions, in my opinion. So I guess to be honest, I was disappointed. I hope the same thing doesn't happen at, if Michelle's coming again to the Green Committee, because I think council as a whole, with our discussions around the table, we would have had a lot more questions that were relevant in talking with Michelle here. So I'll leave that at that. Minor hockey. There was a meeting there a week or so ago, and there's still, the bank account looks like there's a couple $100,000 there, but it should be all spent by the end of the year. Get down to a balance of 0. Something interesting I found, they received a invoice from the town, I think it was December, and I heard them talk about it a month ago, and they had paid it, but it still wasn't, the check still wasn't off their account yet. So to me, it seemed like, gee, somebody gives you a check, how long does it take before it gets into the bank or something like this? So anyways, it was just something, I may, when I run into Spencer sometime, ask them, or I may ask the treasurer, when really did you issue the check, and then how long does it take before the town cashes it? And then recently I did see some correspondence about still questions around ice availability at St. Mary's. And I know the mayor was away at our last meeting after I had that meeting, and I thought I should mention it again here. What I said at that meeting was the previous minor hockey meeting, they talked about 4 years ago the total revenues being $400,000. And in 2025-2026 season, they were $700,000. And it's not that the fees have increased. It's because we went from 2 years of teams. Once we went to A level, then it increased a number of teams. So there's just a lot more players on the male and the female sides in the minor hockey, but that's quite an increase over, and that's exactly why there's no prime time available. When you see that kind of a surge. So I thought I just wanted to mention that again for the mayor. Lincoln's, really, there's no issues. Everything's running smooth. Playoffs is coming. They had a bit of rough luck last weekend, but hey, they can turn it around. They've had a couple injuries and a couple APs playing. But there's been no community liaison committee meeting. Upper Tens, we did have a meeting, and it was really, a lot of the meeting was spent for the next year getting the chair and the vice chair and all the positions. I am on the hearing committee again. I haven't had a hearing yet, but I'm really looking forward to one, so I see how it really functions. I think the word of the day when I go through that board was it just seemed to be a lot of uncertainty. The board had strategic directions they were thinking going on, and now it's kind of just shelved the sideline because, well, should we be progressing with this, or is it a way, so, but if it takes 5 years, this whole uncertainty and just putting things on the sideline isn't going to be good for anybody, or, we're not moving forward, so that's a little bit of a struggle, so I don't think I have anything else to say on any of the meetings, but I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, Councillor Edney, please.
Thank you, Worship. Last week, of course, was a big week at the Baseball Hall of Fame, despite the actual hall being closed. Programming, of course, Lindsay came up with the idea a couple of years ago to do the Women in Baseball conference, and the first year was last year, and it went over very well. And this year grew upon that, and there was over 125 people signed up, listening in on the program. So that was great. We also, the day before that, announced the inductees, and so that's been done as well. We've begun hiring for summer staff. And of course, the chair has changed too. So the last meeting, I'm not sure the mayor was with us, but it was a little disorganized. But I'm hoping it gets back. We had a great group of people. So just someone learning how to chair a meeting was a little frustrating to watch at the time. The police services, I'm not sure if I mentioned this last month. Our own Steve Cousins is no longer the chair. He actually is no longer on the board. His term has gone out. So we don't have anyone from St. Mary's on that board, so I'm hoping we can do something about that. And then the last one, mobility bus. I just wanted to mention that, mobility services. Perth South has donated their, as we get here, the police vehicle. Once it's repurposed and all the graphics and everything taken off, they've donated one to help. For some odd reason, when you have a certain number of vehicles, and I say fleet, but we're talking 4 or 5, it's hard to kind of call that a fleet, your insurance goes down, the ability to hire people is easier because the qualifications for driving comes down. It's just the oddest set of circumstances. So fortunately, they were able to do that, and so that helps out quite a bit at the mobility services. And I don't think we had any other. Boards to report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, Councillor Luna, please.
Thank you, Worship. The only board that I need to report on is Spruce Lodge. We met on January 21st, and at our meeting next week, we're going to receive the year-end statements, but they told us they're in a good financial position. They were able to meet their occupancy rate at 98% for the year of 2025, which is important because the ministry requires a 97% to maintain their contributions. They did get a WSIB surplus refund, I guess, of $205,000, so that is a big help. The administrator gave a report on their website. There's a Canada Health Donor button now so that people can donate easily online to Spruce Lodge Foundations, which is really important. We're trying to get more donations to help out with special projects in that way. Peter Bolland, the administrator, did a succession survey with the top management staff at Spruce Lodge. And the one that caught my eye is that the administrator listed himself as a 12 to 18 month retirement timeline. So that'll be a big position to fill. They did have a norovirus whole house outbreak in January. There were quite a few residents and staff that were ill from that. I had mentioned previously about the difficulty with some of the alarms on some of the doors, and one resident in particular leaving the building quite often, and the ministry being involved and the police being involved. And so anyway, they had to do a retrofit of the doors with the alarms, and because it's a 60-year-old building, there was a cost overage of about $162,000 that they were trying to dispute with the contractor, and they came to an agreement that they would split some of the difference. So that's been settled. And they had a mediated session for grievances with the union. And the health unit meets this Friday, and that's all I have to report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, Councillor Lucas, please.
Thank you. We had no January meeting for Heritage Committee, but we do have one tomorrow night, so I will have something to report on in March. Planning Advisory Committee, Jim touched on it, that it was a joint committee going over zoning bylaw review, so I think that's good. There was lots of fulsome discussion last night and lots of engagement, so that was good to see. And then Spruce Lodge, the meeting got changed to an online meeting and moved ahead, so I logged in to motion the adjournment. So, so I caught the tail end of that meeting. But yeah, the succession plan I think was I saw it through the on the agenda, so I think that's good discussion to start having now. So, anyways, that's all I have.
Okay, any questions? Councillor Pridham?
Thank you, through your worship. There were already lots of comments about the fundraising committee through the library board, and we're going to be expecting more information on that on March 10th here at council, so I won't say anything more about that. The strategic plan survey that was out has been condensed, and the library CAO has suggested and the board approved that we do a facilitated planning session, building a new strategic plan. So that'll be exciting, having someone from one of the London, she knows from the London Library, come in and help us work through that for the new strategic plan. Recreation and Leisure Advisory Committee meets near the end of this month, so I have nothing to report, but I imagine we'll be looking at suggestions for the Sports Wall of Fame and working through that. And the Chamber of Commerce, just to note that the upcoming Business After 5 is here in St. Mary's, and it's at 162 Queen Street East, the building that is owned by Taylor Shackleton. And so she'll be hosting there, and it's also the same night as the potluck soup crawl or something. Soup crawl. So that will be a fun event to go to, attend there, and then go down to the stores that are participating and do the soup crawl. And that's about it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay. Councillor Howard, please.
Thanks, Your Worship. Man, other councillors keep plugging my report. That's crazy. So the BIA did meet last night, and we had a presentation from Michelle Courtney from the BRA regarding the recycling transition. And I will say, I'll echo Councillor Craig Miles' sentiments, and I did think that there would be more questions asked as a result of this presentation. But I think in fairness, I've also given 2 separate reports previous to that were kind of touching on some of the same information in less detail. So it is possible maybe that being confronted with that information more than once, they just didn't have as much kind of to think about it. However, they were happy to see that they can request extra bins to compensate for the less regular pickup time. So that's nice, as well as I will mention that the recording of that presentation will be sent out to the membership as well in our monthly newsletter. So that information is still available. Beyond that, I will make mention of the soup crawl, which is February 25th, 6 to 7:30. BYOS, bring your own spoon. 15 participants downtown. So we're working on a prize for the winning soup. They're looking at kind of just a little memento to hang in the shop, just to show that you won the soup crawl for that year. And the winner of the draw for the actual customers of the soup crawl will get a nice soup bowl from Zenfire, which is lovely, I think. Beyond that, we had a discussion regarding beautification, and then we are looking at ordering more Christmas kind of light fixtures, but we have to have a discussion with Public Works to see if the weight will be enough for our poles to handle. So beyond that, I have nothing else to report for the BIA. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Councillor Edney?
Thank you, Worship. I did have one small question for Councillor Alward. about the BIA. A few years back, I got a plaque from the BIA for 15 years of being in the downtown. I'm approaching 24. I'm just wondering, are we not doing the plaques anymore for?
To be honest, it's not something that we've discussed this term, I think, at all, but I could ask and get back to you on that.
I'd appreciate it. I, as a store owner, having that in my front window kind of was cool. And people could see that, you know, a business had been there for a number of years. So I think it's a really good initiative, and I don't think these plaques are particularly expensive. And it creates a lot of goodwill, too. So.
I will say, however, there was recently one for a store opening where they did receive something. So I'll get back to you on that, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? All right, so the suggested motion is that committee and board minutes listed under agenda items 9.1 to 9.17 be received, and that the verbal updates provided by council representatives on those committee and board meetings be received. So I'm willing to move that motion. Moved by Councillor Craigmile, seconded by Councillor Luna. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. I have nothing under emergent or unfinished business under item 10. Under number 11, there was a notice of motion presented by Councillor Luna. It's long, so forgive me, maybe the clerk will scold me, but I don't think I'll read the whole thing if that's okay. It's been printed before in the package. It's the second time around. So I will begin the discussion by asking if there is a seconder to the motion. Councillor Edney seconds. Discussion, Councillor Luna.
Thank you, Worship. I don't want to say a lot about this because we had the presentation by Mr. Morton, and the motion is there before council. I support this motion because I feel that the reduction of farmland in Ontario is a concern, and not only for today but for future generations. And I think this bill will help, if it passes, will help to reduce urban sprawl and encourage density within municipalities. And we did receive the letter of concern from Mr. Van Dyke, so it's there for council to consider. And I will be asking for a recorded vote, Your Worship, on this motion.
Okay, thank you. Further comments? Councillor Craigmile.
Thank you, Worship. Well, I did a little bit of my own research there a couple of weeks back before I even saw that letter that was sent to us. But anyways, what I come up with was that Bill 21 seeks to mandate the food belt plan in the Golden Horseshoe to all of Ontario. And although I support prime farmland, and I don't think we should be gobbling it up like we do, but I don't think in southwestern Ontario and rural St. Mary's, it's been a problem. The bill actually says that if you want to do any rezoning, you have to do this agricultural impact assessment. Well, currently under the Municipal Act, we're all put under the microscope of making good decisions. And if we weren't completely sure about rezoning some, we could already ask for this. And I believe if you had to do this for every land, I see it as just increasing the cost for future development, driving up affordable housing costs. I don't see anything positive about it. The governing body being strictly farmers, I mean, I have no issues with that, except I don't know where they're going to be from, and if they're from the farmers right around the GTA, they're going to make the decisions on any sort of land preservation, which is going to leave us completely out. And as I keep going down, I keep thinking, like, if we were going to support this, I'm not sure why we bought 90 Carling Street, because we're just shooting ourselves in the foot having to go through all this to bump up the development costs. So there's just one thing after another leads me that it just is another layer of red tape. It ends up costing the end user. And I believe just in the last week, I saw a video put out by the town about really our ARUs and how good it is to work with the town from a recent development up on Queen Street. And I'm thinking, this is completely opposite to what we're trying to do. That our planning committee right now is using every tool available to them in that toolbox to try and get all different built forms of housing and trying to, it's almost impossible to get the cost down to the affordable level, but to get them, you know, to where people, there are other choices. And I don't think we need this. There has been a lot of bad decisions by other groups outside of, I think, our local area, especially around the GTA, and I don't think we should be punished for it. So for that, I would urge all councillors not to support this motion.
Okay, thank you. Further comments? Councilor Lucas?
Thank you, through the mayor. I support responsible use of farmland as far as development goes. My struggle here again, and I asked Mr. Morton when he was here, will all stakeholders be sitting on this proposed committee? And it was emphasized to me, no, this would be made up of agricultural representatives. So for me to support something that puts another layer on top of us not being able to make a decision for our own community, I just cannot support. So I will not be supporting this motion.
Okay, further questions, comments? Councilor Pridham?
I'm looking at it strictly through a St. Mary's lens, and the only lands that we have available now to develop into residential or any form of expansion of St. Mary's are agricultural lands within the town of St. Mary's. And to have us, our ability to be able to house and or grow restricted, I can't see that as a benefit, that extra layer of bureaucracy as a benefit for us as a town of St. Mary's. So I don't support it either.
Further questions, comments? Okay, so I have a motion moved by Councillor Luna, seconded by Councillor Edney. Councillor Luna has requested a recorded vote, so I'll turn it over to our clerk then, if there's nothing further from council.
Thank you, Mayor Strathy. You've heard the motion. I'll begin with Councillor Luna and proceed to her left. If you are in support, please state support. If you oppose, please state oppose. Councillor Luna.
Support.
Mayor Strathy.
Support.
Councillor Lucas.
Oppose.
Councillor Pridham.
Oppose.
Councillor Alward.
Oppose.
Councillor Craigmile.
Oppose.
And Councillor Edney. Council, you have 4 votes opposed. The motion fails.
Okay, thank you. So moving on the agenda then, coming to item number 12, we have 2 meetings forthcoming, strategic priorities on February 17th and regular council February 24th. Is there any other meetings anyone wanted to bring up? Councilor Luna?
There is a meeting, I think, tomorrow night at Wildwood Care Center that should be interesting if anybody's interested on their expansion. So just to mention that.
Yeah, I received, no, I forget the time. Is it 6?
6 o'clock, I think.
6:30?
6. I've got 6, I think. I think I put 6.
So I did get a notice, and I'm glad you brought that up. I had a note here to bring that up as well, actually, because it's the initial meeting with the neighbors. There's been nothing formally presented to the town. That being said, there's been a consultation, but I'm already starting to receive questions, and I haven't seen a site plan. So, I mean, there's, I did receive 3 neighbors in my office one morning with a lot of questions that I couldn't answer. That being said, the meeting proposal does show a significant development, which will be one way or another, whichever way it goes, quite a change for the town. There it is, 6 to 7:30 tomorrow night, actually. Okay, and we have a heritage meeting, so hopefully we'll be able to see some of it anyway. But anyway, there will be extended. Mr. Kimmer, do you mind just saying there's been nothing formally presented to town other than a consultation.
Is this on? Yeah. Yeah, we're just at pre-consultation phase of this project. So no formal submissions, nothing deemed complete. So staff are just at that very early stage of providing preliminary comments back to the applicant.
I guess the message I wanted to take to council is that you will probably receive a lot of questions because the way it was pitched to me is that they thought the project had been approved. And while the facility is zoned for what they're doing, there certainly has been no site plan approvals or rezoning to allow for anything yet. And it's a conversation that will inevitably happen here, and I'm sure it'll be a lively one way or another. So it's important that we all kind of get up to speed as things progress, but nothing has been formally presented to the town yet. You know, I will say that the mayor and I did have or the CEO and I did have a meeting a year and a half ago, just with the principals to say, you know, we're thinking about doing something, and you know, what about this, and then subsequent there was a meeting, you know, with staff for a pre-consult, but nothing has been determined. Unfortunately, the rumor mill had suggested that everything was approved and nothing's been approved. Okay. So again, just a heads up, everyone needs to get up to speed on what's going on. There'll probably be questions as a result of this meeting that's happening as well. Okay. But it is by looks of it, it is a substantially large development that they're talking about. Okay. And staff will provide updates as we receive submissions, but we're not at that point yet, just so everyone's clear. Okay, anything else for meetings? Councillor Edmund?
Just lastly, I want to wish the mayor a happy birthday.
It's coming up.
It's a big one.
It's Thursday.
Yeah, it's Thursday. Yeah,
Thursday.
It's a big one.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing nothing else, then we'll move on to our confirmation bylaw. That bylaw 07-2026 being allowed to confirm the proceedings of this meeting be approved by council. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Lucas, seconded Councillor Edney. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Okay. And finally, the suggested motion this meeting be adjourned at 8:02 p.m. Someone willing to move that? Councillor Luna moves. Seconder, Councillor Pridham. Luna and Pridham. All in